This webinar will explore the needs of the senior executives and how to tie quantitative metrics to your organization's strategic goals, programs, and initiatives. Visionary organizations realize that success in the analytics space is defined by integration of key performance indicators and qualitative context. The Forerunner Group is a consulting and systems integration firm that specializes in helping our clients utilize cloud-based analytics, planning, and simulation solutions. Today's presentation will be led by Dwight DeVera, Managing Director of the Forerunner Group. An accomplished speaker and presenter, Dwight is an industry expert in the business, intelligence, and data warehousing community. He has given presentations at several venues, including Oracle Open World, International Oracle Users Group, MicroStrategy World, SQL Pass, Hyperion Solutions, Collaborate. So with this background, Dwight, I'll ask you to start your presentation.
Thanks, everyone. Actually, what I wanted to do is to begin with a very, very quick agenda. So we're going to talk about analytics over time and really how the timeline of an analytical application really affects a system as it relates to an organization's goals, objectives, strategies, programs, and initiatives. And then we're also going to talk about how an organization can manage from an analytical perspective via a strategy, and then drill into operating with quantitative tactics. Time willing, we're actually going to do a quick Q&A at the end of the presentation. So like Karen mentioned, if you have any questions, please use the GoToMeeting chat window, and then we'll get started with any questions you may have during the presentation. So let's drill into and talk about the current state of analytics. And many times we search, the marketing team searches for images for many of these webinars, and this is really a good description of kind of what's going on. There are many organizations that have repainted themselves, or many organizations that sell simple reporting tools and repainted themselves as analytics firms. And they say that we're cutting edge, we've been around for 15 years, and now we do analytics or what have you. And just like you see in this image, there's a problem with that. I really want to challenge everyone about a firm actually proceeding and describing themselves as a world-class analytical platform, but having really the underpinnings and the legacy technologies of just reporting. And you see in many times that simple reporting systems are very rear view focused, or really they look into the past of really the data that's available to you in the organization, and they're not really adding extra value. They're not really looking into the future. They're not doing anything modern or cutting edge. It's much more of kind of a simple reporting type of exercise. And in particular, one of the things that we've seen is there's so much focus and energy around pivot tables or simple data pivots or what have you. Simple, even like Excel types of interfaces, when there's so much more potential out there in the market space that's related to this $14 billion space called analytics. Now, from a project perspective, many times what ends up happening is there is just incredible tradition and inertia, and sometimes the experience of and modern-day analytics projects sometimes feels just like what you're seeing here, like this hamster wheel, or another good analogy would be something like a treadmill. And just like how no one who calls themselves a runner would ever say that they really like running on a treadmill, many times these analytics types of projects, they get stuck in this type of exercise. They're in this world where you're looking at the same wall, or you're looking at the same TV interface, and really just going through the motions. And primarily because one thing that we've seen that happens, which is a tragic mistake, is a project will kick off, which will be a brand new analytics, big data type of project, and the first thing an organization tries to do is recreate the reports that they already have. primarily because there's a lot of safety in that. But the real problem is that report that you have, the simple fact that you brought it into the room and then you actually brought it into the meeting means that you already have a copy of one of those reports, and the last thing you need is yet another one. So by following this tradition, by being on this never-ending hamster wheel, there really is no vision. There's all of this inertia, and you feel like you're on this technical wheel to nowhere. Now, like I mentioned a little earlier, the secret sauce to really a very successful analytical application, and it's really the title of this webinar series, is we turn up the volume on analytics. So too often, that report, that legacy report, that historical thing that you've been working with to run the business has been looking in the past. It really is just it's probably a summary or a simple comparison of how the organization is doing this year to last year, or maybe this year to the plan, or maybe comparing other periods over time, or what have you. And that's the limit of analytics in the past. And it does not have to be the limit of how things work going forward. So beyond simple reporting, what you can get into is you turn up the volume a little. You can get into segmentation type of analysis, Pareto types of analysis, and the 80-20 rule. You can use modern-day visualizations, like these bullet visualizations, to do your simple comparisons, but then show you a high degree of fidelity as it relates to how you're doing compared to some individual milestone. And then if you look at the bottom left corner here, we have something which is called a waterfall visualization. Now, in the waterfall world, it is a tool that allows us to really tell the story from an analytical perspective of where we've been and where we're going. The first bar shows you where we've been. All the bars in between, the green and the red bar, show you what happened between the second milestone and then the final bar on the bottom. And then we get into some really interesting things. We turn up the level on the math, and we actually shield people from the detailed mathematics and calculations of doing things like predicting the future, and we can use visualizations to predict the future and to project and to use, say, simulation technologies, or to use best fit or forecasting models within your analytical platforms. And then finally, taking all of those things and then using some different and world-class visualizations. And those visualizations may be things like Google Maps. They may be different types of visualization interfaces that involve really other weather patterns or external data. Now, one of the problems is, well, the first problem with this slide, and I really like the marketing team for coming up with it, is that please don't buy any software that comes in a box anymore, right? One of the problems with this analytical space is there's lots of budget, lots of dollars being spent on this space. And one of the things that ends up happening is just because it's new does not really mean it's analytics. You may buy one of these legacy software providers which are really just kind of reporting tools in sheep's clothing or what have you. And many times when we work in the field with lots of our customers, we talk about creating a business case, ROI, really in a value proposition for any project. And many times the analytics project, if you're just recycling the past, if you're just recreating really reports that you already have in existence, we can guarantee that that project has a negative ROI. We can guarantee that you're actually spending a lot of resources and people's time and their careers to really get to a point which is exactly where you are today. So many times these new software platforms, they have dubious value. And of course, no one ever buys anything that's not really visually stunning, but many times these are just pretty faces in the crowd. Now, one thing that's going to be very different about what you're about to see as we kind of go through this webinar is we are talking about analytical solutions and the growth playbook in a moment that leverage an existing investment that your organization has in these platforms. We're going to talk about systems that you have and utilizing them to really bring this best case secret sauce type of platform into your world by adding context and modern day visualizations. So, as I promised a little earlier in the agenda slide, we want to talk about analytics over time. And when we talk about analytics over time, we're talking about events that occur that add context to how the business is actually running. There's a statistic out there that actually came from the Gardner Group, and it talked about the analytics space and really the challenges that everyone on this webinar faces. And one of the biggest challenges is 80% of the data that really makes up the entire analytical case or story is not really available to you in your classic analytical repositories, meaning it's not in your database, it's not in the data warehouse. Much of it is in spreadsheets. Some of it is in Word documents or Office documents or what have you. And what ends up happening is the details or the true story gets lost over time. And when the story gets lost over time, the things that come to being, or the way you actually operate, is this concept that we've used many times in the past called tribal knowledge. And tribal knowledge reigns supreme. That person or that business user says, oh yeah, this is really what happened last year, but it's nowhere to be seen in the data, and it's nowhere to be seen inside of your analytical systems. So by couching your analytical environment in a timeline, by making it event-based, what we're able to do is to grab both qualitative elements and quantitative elements. And this is very important. And this is really where it's going to get a little different versus probably things that you're used to using, where the qualitative side of things will allow us to add context and meaning to your analytical platform. So it's not just the numbers, it's the story. And that story sometimes is really just comments. That story sometimes is actually Word documents, PowerPoint documents like the one you're seeing, Office documents, or what have you. And to be very, very effective, one of the things we highly recommend is that you have everything running through the cloud and through the web in a single source. Right now, I'm not talking about portals. We're going to talk about portals in a moment. We're talking about portals as a source. We're talking about a merge of the qualitative and quantitative elements that will tell the analytical story within your organization and use all the available resources, not even new resources, at your disposal. So when I talked about comments with really the marketing team when we were putting this thing together, many times they search through the web for images to really kind of make the point. But this one was pretty simple. I just searched my hard drive. I said, hey, you know what? I have 1,000 spreadsheets that actually have an analytical case here. It's really like a HR budgeting type of spreadsheet. And then over on the far right, there's this comments column, right? Now, the real problem is anybody who writes anything in that comments column is just locking it in this spreadsheet, and it's going to be lost over time somewhere really on the network or in the portal, and it'll never be seen. And one of the things that we want to start to get into, or we're going to talk about when we dive into the growth playbook in a moment, is how we use these comment columns, how we use portal types of technologies to really connect the dots and allow you to have a single place where we go to do our work. I really love, and actually I've seen lots of organizations start to embrace platforms like SharePoint and NetWeaver or what have you, because it is a place where we can store all our quote-unquote stuff, right? All of the Word docs, all the Excel documents, or what have you, that's searchable, indexed, secured, and organized. So we're going to transition. We're actually going to talk about how to do this in practice now. We talked about some of the elements of the secret sauce, managing over time, managing with qualitative and quantitative metrics, turning up the volume on analytics. But now we're actually going to dive into the actual growth playbook. And what the growth playbook allows us to do is it allows us to tie an organization's metrics to their goals and objectives. The whole concept of the growth playbook is that we can see and have line of sight from the top of the organization to the bottom of the organization with complete transparency and complete context. So what I'm going to do actually is drag the playbook interface over here, and what you're seeing is really just our simple integrated dashboard that actually shows you from a strategic perspective all the areas in an organization. So the financial areas, the customer areas, internal, and then learning and growth. And you're seeing just a highly visual type of experience where I can, say, expand learning and growth, and then you can see a cascading effect of goals and objectives, programs, and initiatives. So a goal here in learning and growth may be increasing company satisfaction or personnel trained, and then we have this cascading element of being able to see and drill down and see all of the different initiatives in a rolled up type of fashion and their individual status. So as we kind of expand and collapse that, we can search and surf through all kinds of different areas in the company. So we can talk about, say, expenses, gross profit, and margins. If there's a problem here in margins, we can fill things out and actually expand and collapse that. And then you can see that, hey, there's a problem here in sales. We're not going to go through the entire growth playbook, but one of the things I wanted to do is kind of talk about really how this context, this strategic cascading effect of goals, objectives, programs, and initiatives gives everyone a story of where this individual metric actually comes into being. So we have the internal metrics here. We have new product releases as a goal. We have released 3 major programs, ensure 20% of revenue is in line. And then we can kind of come down here and then we can see an individual project at the bottom of the hierarchy, and then this program for releasing 3 new programs. So from here, I can actually open up this individual project, this individual big sandy type of project, and kind of see really where the organization is from this individual project's perspective, and then even see that, okay, we have some problems with meeting support and the cost is in line, but the risk is out of line. And then you can even see things like a context-sensitive single place to say, hey, let's look at the overall Gantt chart and project plan, and then kind of see where the organization is or where this individual project lies. Now, what you're seeing here is you're seeing that out in September, or basically in the fall and the summer, we're falling way behind on this individual project. So we can kind of come back and then take a look at individual projects and say, all right, let's look at the total portfolio of projects, and then actually even drill down and say that let's look at really from a quantitative perspective what the individual work streams are and then what their individual statuses are. Now what you're seeing here is this mix of qualitative and quantitative goals, objectives, and initiatives. But it's not your traditional reporting, dashboarding type of interface. If we actually wanted to look at some of the traditional ways your integrated business intelligence and analytical platforms relate, we can again go through a operational drill down and then look at individual parts of the company. We can look at consumer products, engineering, finance, manufacturing, operations. And then over here in manufacturing, I have this little link. And what we're doing here is we're actually opening up an analytics window into the analytics platform that we're using. Here, it's just a simple reporting tool, but it could be any tool within your organization. We're really just kind of, from a context perspective, looking at these individual manufacturing metrics right at the point of contact, right in the context of really where you are within the entire strategy map within a particular initiative. If I come down here, that was manufacturing. Let me look at my operations dashboard. Again, you're kind of seeing just your operations metrics in context within all of the details that we were actually talking about a little earlier, from a complete strategy perspective and from a complete initiative perspective. If I wanted to actually even drill down and cascade down to just the operations departments in 2014, we can kind of see, again, a summary of the entire department, really what's going on, the metrics that we were looking at, and then we were seeing these individual contextual qualitative elements, right? So from a program perspective, we can see the financial goals, the internal goals, the customer goals, right? And then here we have, again, released 3 major programs this year. Now, when we were talking about and we designed the growth playbook, we wanted it to be a complete interface that allows us to, right at the point of contact from work anywhere in the system, make adjustments. So we're going to saying, hey, this is red, and then here is really the progress, really from Bruce here. It says, unexpected competitors have entered the market. And so if I actually come over here and actually from a management and exec perspective say, we will reallocate resources from another project, I could submit that, and then actually it's part of the system of record. Now, you're seeing also here that there's this final link over here to the right, which is really this presentation link, because one of the things that we really wanted to focus on in today's webinar is a single place to really house the story of the analytical context and the analytical problems that your organization is facing. So in the playbook, if I actually just click on this link, what it really is doing is it takes me directly to this SharePoint document library, and this document library allows me to actually say, hey, here's actually this presentation, a presentation we're staring at, which is this secret sauce to world-class analytics. And you can actually see that it fires up in PowerPoint online. So with that, I wanted to actually kind of go back to our presentation and really, just kind of wrap up. So as we've actually circled through really a quick demo of the growth playbook, we just wanted to talk about from a high level how an organization actually does this. We actually deploy the playbook on premises or in the cloud or managed in the cloud. And it allows us to really create and link up these missing solutions: qualitative content, quantitative goals, objectives, programs, and initiatives, and link our operational systems as well as our analytical systems. So with that, what I wanted to do is kind of hand things back over to Karen, and then ask Karen if anyone has actually entered in questions. If you have any questions, please enter it in using the GoToWebinar interface, and then we'll actually get to them. So Karen?
Thank you, Dwight. We do have a question. Our first question is, we have Tableau for reporting. Will that work with Growth Playbook?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we were doing within the Growth Playbook interface is we're actually just creating a link out to that Tableau report. One of the things that we're not in the business of is recommending that, hey, you should buy Tableau or you should buy ClickTech or things like that. Those decisions have been made. You have analytical platforms that your organization has invested in, and Tableau is just another one that we can just easily access.
Great. I think we have time for a quick second question. Do any organizations run Growth Playbook not in the cloud?
Actually, that's a great question, Karen. I mean, we have the ability to run it on premises or really in a private cloud. I mean, it's a fairly straightforward type of infrastructure. It actually runs on a lot of Microsoft technologies, and then we can house it really within the corporate firewall or within a really kind of within the premises of an organization. Most customers, though, that use the Growth Playbook, they see it as an external resource that can securely connect to really anything that's out there. So whether you're using and connecting to your internal SharePoint, or whether you're connecting to really social media, Salesforce.com, other analytical platforms, whether they're in the cloud or not in the cloud, the Growth Playbook is kind of a seamless component and a seamless piece of that strategy or piece of a puzzle.
That's the last of our questions for now. If you have additional questions, please call or email Dwight or myself. You see our contact information on the screen. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be providing information as to how your colleagues who couldn't attend today can watch the recording of this presentation. Thank you very much for attending today's presentation. I hope you found it interesting and informative. Goodbye.
Thanks, everyone.